You're listening to Change Your POV podcast, episode 42.
Someone said recovery is kind of like rent. It's due every day. So you just you have to put in the hard work and do it every day. And that's kind of the deal. It's an everyday thing. If you think about, well, I've got to deal with this for the next 40 years, 50 years, man, that's a beast. But if I just have to get through today. I just have to get through this week. I just have to get, some days I just have to get through this moment.
Welcome to Change Your POV podcast, helping you navigate transitions in your life, like entering and exiting college or the military, changing jobs or careers, and providing you with the coaching and mentorship needed to help you advance in your personal or professional life. Sometimes all you need is to change your point of view. Now, here's your host, Eddie Lazary.
Hello, folks, and welcome to Change Your POV podcast. I am your host, Eddie Lazary. This week, we conclude our interview with Jay Fondren. If you missed last week's episode, I recommend you go back and check out the special tribute episode for the Battle of Sadr City. It is in tribute to the men who lost their lives and the many more that were wounded for the battle in Sadr City on April 4th, 2004. That episode, Jay and I share our perspective of that battle that night and the days that followed. This week's episode, Jay shares with us a little bit more of a personal story. The day before Thanksgiving in 2004, Jay's vehicle was hit by an improvised explosive device, or IED, which left him permanently wounded. Jay shares with us his perspective on this story as well as mine. And he also opens up and shares some of the struggles that he has and how he's able to cope with them today. He's an extremely powerful human being, and I look up to him greatly. The strength that he exhibits on a daily basis through his faith and his loving family and 6 kids, I can honestly say, if it were me, I don't know if I could do as good a job as he's done in 12 years since this event. Jay is such an inspiration. I have seen greater, stronger men collapse under less pressure. I wanted to thank Jay for coming on this show and sharing with us such an intimate and personal story. I hope you, the listener, have an opportunity to really listen to the message that Jay is sharing. And I hope that, if nothing else, you can look into yourself and say, what are some things that I'm struggling with in my life? What are some things that seem insurmountable to me today? What can I do to look forward? What can I do to overcome them? And if I can't do it by myself, who can I look to help me through it? And with that, let's get into the interview. So let's go back a little bit in time and let's talk about Jay Fondren, the guy before the Army. So when did you join the Army?
I joined January of 2000. I'd been in college. Playing college soccer. I met the woman that's now my wife. Man, I really liked playing soccer, really liked everything, didn't like the college, didn't like going to class.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife and I, we knew we were going to get married, and I'd always wanted to be in the military. And so my grandfather served during World War II. My uncles had served during Vietnam. I mean, as far back as the American Revolution, there's somebody in my family that had served. And so we were like, my wife and I we had talked it over, and we kind of prayed about it and decided that I would enlist. And so I went and talked to the recruiter and asked him what jobs were available, and he told me, and he showed me a video of In the Army Now, where Pauly Shore lasers the target with the big laser. And I said, that's what I wanted to do. That was my recruiting video, and my introduction to being a 13 Fox, and so I signed up, enlisted, shipped off to basic in AIT at Fort Sill in January of 2000.
Wow. So you were January 2000. I was in I was in Korea at the time. I
Yeah.
was finishing up my year in Korea. And so your first duty station then was 1st Battalion, 82nd Field Artillery, 1st Cav Division, Fort Hood, yeah?
Yeah, it was. So I walked in, and I remember the corporal that was over in the S1 shop came pick me up from Davardi and walked me over, and he looks at me. We're about halfway through the parking lot, and he looks over at me. He goes, Private Farner. He's like, "Do you like having sex?" And I go, "I don't know how to take this." And I looked at him and I go, "Well, I guess as much as the next guy. I mean, I don't know how you answer that question." And he goes, "Well, good, because we get screwed here every day." And and I said, "Okay." And so we walk in, and walk in to go down the battalion, get checked in there, go down. And he drops me off at the HHB. It was HHB at the time, and so drops me off at HHB in the office there. And so I'm in there, and there's a bunch of other senior NCOs and first sergeants. I'm waiting on first sergeant and the BC to come and get me and talk to me. And I just happen to go, "What do I go, what do I need to do? What do I have to do to get assigned to Colt?" And they're like, "Oh, shut up, you can get assigned to whatever we want to assign you to." And I was like, "Okay, Roger that, first sergeant." And so, but I didn't know it. But standing in the office was the brigade fire support officer, the brigade fire support NCO, the Colt platoon leader, and the Colt platoon sergeant were all in there when I said that. And because I just remembered that my one of my instructors was like, "Look, if you're gonna go to a heavy unit like first cav and you want to survive on the battlefield, you need to be Colt." He goes, "That's where the
Mhm.
best of the best are in a heavy unit." He goes, "Plus you're not riding around in a fist V." And that was all I could think of was, I don't want to be in a fist V. I don't want to be in a fist V. And so I get assigned to Delta 25 and for about 2 weeks. And then I get the Colt platoon sergeant comes and gets me. I'm over at the OFT, the Reserve Fire Trainer, and the Colt platoon sergeant comes and gets me. And he goes, "Come with me, go pack your bags. Here's your packing list." I pack my stuff. They take me out to the field. I road march, I think, was with now Major McDonald, but it was Sergeant McDonald at the time. Like halfway out to OP Taco there at Fort Hood.
Yeah.
We get up on the hill. They come out. I do a train sketch. He's like, "Where do you think you are on the map?" And I'm like, "I think I'm right here." And he's like, "Okay, good. Here's your grid off the plugger." And I'm like, "Okay." So I got my 10-digit grid, and he's like, "Well, give me the grids to some of these targets out there on the deal." And he's like, "Okay," and I give grids to targets on the hill. And he's like, "All right." He goes, "Here's your call sign. Here's the FTC's call sign. Your ship battalion certification." He goes, "We'll let you know if you screw up." And I didn't see anybody. I mean, literally, they would come down to top off my canteen and to bring me chow. And I think it was MRE. But I sat underneath a poncho and I shot the battalion. At the end of the only thing I remember was getting told, not being yelled at over the hill, not to ride. And I didn't know that anybody was back there. But like the last day, I get told not. I hear the Colt platoon leader yelling at me not to Roger him out over the radio. And then I'm having a conversation with my new team chief about, "Isn't that proper radio protocol, though?" I called him. He's like, "Yeah, but don't Roger out the LT." I'm like, "Okay, got it,
You're like
Sergeant.
Roger out.
Roger out." And so at the end of the week, they pulled me back up up to the top of the OP, and the entire fifth platoon or entire Colt platoon was sitting right up there. And I go, "All right." I said, "You want to know what you need to do to be Colt? This is what it was." And welcome to Colt.
Mm.
And then I think we road marched from there out to Belora for Battalion Fun Day or something. But
Nice.
you know, that's kind of how we rolled, and that began my life in Colt. I think the entire time I was in the was there, I changed literally. I think I changed. Hold on. Yeah, I'm doing. I'm on the phone. I'll be down a little bit. What do you want to play, Mr. Fondry? When I get off the phone, but it'll be a minute. Okay, that's good copy. Yeah. So like this, I was saying, the entire time I was in 182. I think I changed equipment once and call signs twice, other than going from like you know the Jaffo to the Delta to the Romeo to the November.
Yeah, yeah.
I changed my call sign I think twice. So, but I was on the same equipment that I fell in on as a private. So
Wow. That's pretty impressive, man, to go from hitting your unit as a private and making your way up the ranks to sergeant and then actually deploying to the show as a sergeant. And you actually got promoted as staff sergeant in the country, didn't you?
I did.
Remember?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I was supposed to go to the board before we deployed, and they pushed the board because of deployment. And then when we got over there, first sergeant with the BRT was like, "Hey, you need to go and you got to win NCO of the quarter before I'll give you a waiver." And I'm like, well, "Okay." So I went and won NCO of the quarter and got and then they sent me to the next month. They sent me to the promotion board over in Iraq.
So you were a Colt the whole time, and of course you were in the platoon before I got there. And
Right.
so I get there, and our platoon was pretty. It was pretty full. I mean, there was still some positions open, but I just remember I got there not too long after I got there. They ended up sending an element to do a rotation in Kuwait. Remember that?
Yeah, I was on standby to deploy to Kuwait. So I went through and got all the vaccinations and did everything, and I didn't because they deployed right around Christmas. I think it was like December 17th or 15th or somewhere in there. So I didn't
Yeah.
get Christmas leave that year because I was on standby, so I didn't get it put in for block leave. And then
Mm.
when I came off standby, then they were like, "Okay, well, just gonna use you to fill up the duty roster because everybody deployed." And I was like, well, and I actually wanted to go on that rotation. I wanted to be in the field training. I mean, that's kind of how most of our guys were. We either wanted to be in the field training or in the rear getting in trouble. But so I actually wanted to go on that rotation. But they, anyway, so we wound up doing that. I think that was my first Christmas I pulled CQ. Not the last time I pulled CQ on Christmas, but the first Christmas I
Yeah.
pulled CQ. I think I had Christmas and then I had New Year's. I had Christmas and then I had New Year's Eve that
Wow.
year. You know,
Yeah, and
good
I got
times.
there. Yeah, I got there November of 2000, and then yeah, like a month later, those guys left, which kind of left our Colt platoon pretty well vacated of folks there for a little while, and then we started getting an influx of more guys that came in, and then some of the core platoon like Pastor and Ford. And a few other guys ended up PCS into Korea and some other places. So just a little bit of time that I was there, the faces within the Colt platoon changed quite a bit. But you were one of the very few that actually was kind of the staple, one of the staple guys within the Colt platoon that never really kind of moved on or around. You guys, you were there and just continuously got promoted and it was interesting. It was fun. It was a fun experience to see you grow from from a private to a young sergeant to then a squad leader. And like I said in the intro, you didn't hear it, but you'll get to hear it tomorrow. You really ended up being my right hand guy. The person, my go to person that I really looked up to and had a lot of that I was able to confide in. And as a squad leader, you don't have the opportunity to confide in a lot of people because the only other people around are your guys, and as well as I do, bitches go up, not down. So you and I had spent a lot of time together out in the field and just all over the place, and we are always looking for ways to train our guys and to make them better and make each other better. And yeah, man. So you got a special place in my heart, man, for life, whether you know it or not. But yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't always the nicest to you though. I look back and 12 years later I realized that I was an ass to a lot of guys, for oftentimes for no good reason. But yeah, you were definitely one of the ones that I was pretty hard on early on.
Yeah, I remember I think my first real interaction with you. We were out in the field, and me and Brackett, my roommate, I called him by his first name, and so you drew a figurine on a tree, and I gave a class on proper protocol and discipline, and I think all the elements call for fire and the 15 subs and everything like that to this stick figure who you I think gave a higher rank than I did. So I was at parade rest the entire time giving this class and referring to it as Mister or as specialist or sergeant tree or something like that, and to teach me not to use first names. And I was like, "But he's my buddy and my roommate." And he's like, "Yeah, but out here and I'm like, "Okay."
Oh, what an ass, man. I'm sure there was a lesson in there somewhere. I'm just not sure what it was, but oh man, sorry, man. That's all I can say.
It could have been a
Sorry for
lot.
being an ass.
Could have been a lot worse.
I was a lot worse. You
Yeah,
know it.
yeah, I know.
I know. Oh shit. Oh god.
Yeah, I know.
Uh
You can find it in me. I know. I know where the bodies are buried.
that's no kidding. That's for sure, man. Oh shit. Yeah, so I've worked with a lot of NCOs in my career, but a lot of times it was like come into a unit and they were already sergeants, or or they come into the unit already a sergeant. But you're one of the very unique individuals in my career, where you literally kind of worked your way from private all the way up, level with me, and that was just it was an honor to see that and to witness that and to help. At least I would like to think that I kind of helped guide your path a little bit. I remember you and I have very long conversations about how to deal with certain soldiers because of certain situations, and a lot of mentorship type conversations. And then you were just really open and honest with me, and sometimes you would tell me exactly what I needed to hear, whether I wanted to hear it or not. But it was what I needed at the time, and you had a unique way of being there for me and pushing my buttons all at the same time.
Well, thank you.
But yeah, it's good stuff. And then we deployed to Iraq, and you're now second squad leader. I'm first squad leader. So basically, our platoon is split in two. I've got half, you got the other half, and so and you had the other half as a E5, so you had even more of kind of that weight on your shoulders. And it's tough it's tough to be in charge, but it's even tougher when you're an E5 and you got two other E5s working for you. You know what I mean? And but you pulled it off, man, and you handled yourself very well, and you got the job done. And I know that working with second platoon, a lot of the NCOs and soldiers within second platoon really looked up to you. You knew your job really well, and even though when we got to Iraq, a lot of what we were being asked to do really had nothing to do with calling for fire. It actually had nothing to do with calling for fire. So that was kind of a weird, awkward kind of a thing to do a task that we were really not really trained to do. What was your take on being asked to do that and having guys look up to you, like looking for guidance and direction? And because they're always, because soldiers are always looking to their NCOs as for guidance and direction, but deep down in your mind, in the back of your head, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, right? How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's all new to me. I remember when we started doing the train up, and we're like, well, we're not going to be doing a lot of call for fire. We're going to be doing a lot of or reconnaissance and security type stuff. And we're like, okay, well, we got to learn how to fight the trucks. And I think being in the platoon, being on that equipment, going from the transition from being in FISVs but not using them to being basically air assault, to being on the Humvees when we first got them, to learn how to fight them with the BRT from its inception, just learn how to fight off the truck. And then everybody had that learning curve of, how do I fight this truck in this urban terrain?
Mm,
And then
yeah.
go into, okay, well, now what do I do now that it's in combat and we're not doing our trained MOS, we're doing other stuff. So it's okay. Now before train up, it was okay. We got to learn how to do everything and learn it well and go over it and pound it in. And I think we spent hours in the simulators, hours on the range, hours doing everything we could to get our guys ready.
I remember even getting some engineer tape, remember, and staking out like mock up rooms and practicing entry. Remember that?
Yeah, for all day we would do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And running through, just running it through and running it through, and then Kazivac and Kazivac and
Oh
Kazivac and
yeah.
I mean that paid off. And then our reaction to contact, and our what do we do on this and what do we do on that. And I know, for like when we paired up with second platoon, when I kind of got the word that my squad was going to be committed to second platoon, and we married up, and we just drummed in what we were going to do. If we get to contact that's on the right side, this is what we're going to do. If we get to contact that's on the left side, this is what we're going to do. If we take casualties, this is what we're going to do. If the first
Hmm.
truck gets hit, this is what we're going to do. The second truck gets hit. And then you see, like, when that happens, everybody does exactly what you train them to do.
Hmm.
And I think the biggest thing that kind of helped me was, when we first got over there and we were really starting to get more indirect, not indirect, but more small arms contacts, more
Hmm.
small arms contacts. And I was like, and I talked to first sergeant, and I was like, hey Top, I said, nobody's standing and fighting, because we get shot at and people would kind of move, and it wasn't necessarily our platoon, but it was other elements, and he's like, look, he told me, he said, look, he pulled me aside, said, if you come into contact, he goes, you're gonna have to be the one to engage, and he goes, once you start shooting, everybody else is gonna realize that it's okay, and they're gonna shoot back. So that first time we got into contact, and it was it was sustained, and I was out of the truck. I remember I just rotated over onto burst and started firing and started moving towards the enemy. And I think that's all it took. And my guys were right there, right behind me, and just laying down fire, and we're in it. And then after that, then it was just back to what do we train, but everybody's kind of hesitant to fire at first.
I remember the first time we loaded up live ammos and locked and loaded a magazine into the weapon and cruised outside the gate. It was a weird feeling to be somewhere other than the firing range, ensure your weapon's pointed up and down range, that whole safety protocol that you go through. And now you're rolling around locked and loaded, and people are out there trying to kill you, and it was such a weird feeling. What was your first, I know, aside from April 4th, what was, the first contact that your section engaged where you were, maybe scared's the wrong word, but not sure of kind of how it was going to play out?
We were doing, so my platoon, the first couple months, my first month or so we were over there, we did mainly a lot of night ops. Because remember, I think it was you and I that sat down and we came up with the work rotation plan for the troop, about how first platoon would do this and second platoon would do that, and we came up with the certain hours rotation and QRF schedules and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but we were out and we had set up a checkpoint. So Sergeant Hardy's truck was on just at the Yellow Footbridge area, and then Gangwire was south on Pluto, closer to Cuervo, and then I was closer to Iron Horse, and we had spaced out, and we were really sitting and listening, and but we were also stopping traffic at Hardy's position. He had the ICDC there with him, and so this truck, I remember Gangwire called up that this vehicle was coming down the road pretty fast, and it flown past him. And then about the time they should have hit Hardy, we just hear a bunch of AKs opening up. And so I get out of the truck, and I'm like, well, this is it. They're coming at us, and they're not pop shotting me. We're stopping them here. And so we see them come, and we can see them coming from Hardy's position, and they're on the service road now. And so I did exactly that. What first one I said, rotated it over to burst, and I just start walking towards the car, and I'm lighting it up. And then we put it in the ditch, and then it's reacting to it. Now it's, oh crap, I just lit this car up, and we're in contact. So let's go secure the car. It stopped. Now we got to secure it, but it's just me and Drake, and I got my truck. I got Dennis and Overwatch on the crew serve, but so now it's okay. Now I gotta dismount it and move my vehicle, or I think I left Chase the medic with Dennis, and then Drake and I moved up on the vehicle and got up there, and it was they had ditched it. And so then by the time then we called it in. By then, Gangwire and Hardy came rolling up on us, and the ICDC started searching, and they found the guys in the mosque. That was the first time, and it was this is really real. And then I think the one that really kind of stood out to me, it was a game changer for me, was the night that Gangwire's truck got hit in that ambush.
Oh, was it the RPG came through the window and blew up on the inside of the truck and got Nathan, or was that first platoon?
No, that's it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were doing a very similar style deal, and so I was in the rear, and so what we had done would do was I would just drop off. So I dropped off and pulled over, and then Gangwire would drop off and pull over, and Hardy would fly past him, and then go and set up, and we would sit in this very stretched out position, but we would sit in Overwatch and scan with the LRAS, and so as soon as Gangwire kind of killed his engine, they put those RPGs into the truck. And me, I mean, we had just killed ours, and so me, like, hey, y'all did, and I had the medic, so it was, get the truck fired up, let's roll up. So we rolled up, and Dennis was going, hey, I don't see anybody. By this time, Nathan, I think, had just finished out firing out his just from out on the belt that he had in his gun. And so I could see the muzzle blast over the side, and so I just directed Dennis to start engaging over to our right, over my side of the vehicle. And so and I have Drake and Chase go up to Gangwire's truck to help get the guys out. So I send them up, and I'm sitting there, and I go to get out to start engaging, and again, it's rounds hitting everywhere around the truck, and I'm like, and they're the fobs calling back in. The Cowboy Mike's calling, wanting to know what's going on. Hardy's out of his truck helping with the casualties. So it's me, Megs, and Wiggles is on the gun on Hardy's truck, and so I jump on the radio, and I'm like, so I'm calling up QRF, and we're running Cassie back, and I remember that night when we came back in, and you'd kind of said something to me about not getting out of the truck. And I remember I opened the door, and I flung the window open, and I started to fire, and I was firing out the window a few times. And then I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, if I get out and open the door and leave the door open, then Dennis is going to take some rant. They can start hitting Dennis. And I'm like, I can't do that. I got to stay on the radio. That's what I need to do. That's just my position in the fight, is as the NCO that's on the radio now. I have to stay engaged on the radio.
Yep, command and control. We were actually, my section was, I don't know if we were the only QRF that was called out that night, but we got quickly dispatched when calls of enemy contact came in, and we rolled out there, and we weren't exactly sure where you were, north or southbound lane, and we ended up heading south. And we saw, as we were heading southbound, we passed your guys' position staged northbound, and you guys were still in the fight. And by the time we got to the turnaround and came back, you guys had already gathered up the casualties and started to evac. I don't know if you evac to Iron Horse or Cuervo at that point, but we were there, and the truck by this time had started on fire.
Yeah, it was cooking. It was starting on. Yeah, it was already. It was burning when we were pulling them out.
Yeah, and we basically, so Top was with me. So when we rolled out with QRF, I think he hopped his truck in. So it was four trucks, and we basically had to pull near side, far side security and keep a safe distance, but basically kind of guard the truck while it burnt to the ground. And we didn't know what kind of munitions were still left on the vehicle. But we actually went up with some like ammo cans, and we grabbed all of our fire extinguishers that we had to try to put out the flames before it got too crazy. But it just, once the tires caught fire and all the stuff on the inside, it just went crazy, and there's nothing we could do to stop it. So we kind of pulled back and just kind of secured it. And next thing you know, all the rounds, I don't know if they were Mark 19 rounds or what was going off in there, but man, it was like 4th of July, man. That truck was just going crazy.
Yeah, it had our platoon's combat loadout of Mark 19 ammunition was in the back of that truck.
That's what was going off.
Yeah, and
Holy
it
shit.
had two more, and because it had a lockable hatch, and so since G and I were both running, G was running a 50 and I was running the 240. We both had both had the squad's Mark 19s in there, so we had the other two Mark 19s because my truck was going to go roll up heavy with a Mark 19, and I think Gangwire's truck was going to roll heavy with a Mark 19. So there were two Mark 19s in there, and there was a lot of ammo, a lot of Mark 19 ammo. And so it was starting to burn, and I was debating having Drake run up there and drop a thermite on it, but it was already starting to go. And I was like, well, it's going to start cooking off, and those guys are going to be stupid to go get on it. And if they do get on it, then so be it. But that ammo, because some of the 50 cal, because there's tons of 50 cal ammo in there too, and it was already starting, as they were pulling those dudes out, it was already starting to pop. The 50 cal ammo was starting to pop, and so we but we loaded everybody up because Omen was hit pretty hard, and Nathan was hit pretty hard, so we got those guys out, and then Hardy flew past us with Omen. I think I had, or he had Omen and Nathan in his truck, and then Gangwire jumped on the back hatch of mine, and he rode on the back hatch back to we rolled into Cuervo and dropped them, and then we rolled back out with the other section of our second platoon when it swung by Cuervo and got up there, and like you said, it was already cooking off.
Yeah, that thing was burnt to the ground. We ended up staying out there and pulling security on it until they brought the I think it was a Hemet wrecker they brought out there with the Hemet flatbed.
Yeah.
And the guy gets out there and he looks at this Humvee. By this time, it's literally like cooked all the way to the ground. I think the highest point on this Humvee might have been like a foot and a half off the ground is all. And he was like, how am I supposed to load this onto the back of the truck? And I'm like, a shovel? Like, it was like, I don't know. He ended up hooking it up to the great big pipe bumper thing that we had welded on there and just literally drug that thing onto the bed of the truck and got it out of there. But it was a lot of casualties that night, but amazingly, nobody died that night. I don't know how in the hell that happened because that RPG came right through the front windshield, blew right past the TC, the gunner. Didn't it detonate on the back of the blast shield there on the inside of the truck?
I think what happened was I think it hit the engine block, and the rocket motor is what came through the front. It penetrated the crew compartment, but the warhead detonated on the hood in the engine.
Okay.
But fragmentation and stuff all came in on the inside, and then but that's what got Omen in the face was the rocket motor.
Yeah, he lost his right eye, right?
Yeah, lost his right eye, and I think it popped him right in the face. I mean, it got him right in the face. He wound up losing his right eye. But that I think they got hit with I think it was a second RPG that hit the truck too. And then I think somewhere in my stuff, I have to find it. I don't know where it's at anymore, but somewhere in all my stuff, I have a tomahawk that was pulled out of the combat tomahawk that was pulled out of that truck. I have to dig through my my stuff, but I believe I still have it. But I have the head because the polymer body didn't make it, but I have the head of it.
It's insane, man. So I'd have to say, man, out of all of the sections that year, your section got hit, man, pretty hard, man. I remember we can go on and on with stories, but I do remember there was a pretty significant IED that blew up as you're going underneath a footbridge, and that blew down on top and got Dennis and Drake and again, surprisingly, no one died in that one. After looking at the Humvee, I ended up taking pictures of the Humvee and just get an assessment of the damage to figure out where that truck was total, but just horrific damage to that truck. And it was amazing. That was another RPG ambush. My section was on its way back from dropping somebody off at Buyout for their 2-week R&R, and we were heading back in, and we had just re-entered the AO, and we got a call on the troop net that there was a section taking enemy contact, and it was your section. And so me and Malt, we beat feet as fast as we could northbound Pluto to about the area where the reports were coming from. And by the time we got there, the little ambush kind of subsided, and you guys were right in the middle of basically casualty evacuation. And so we were there left to secure that truck as well. And I remember right as you guys were leaving, your platoon sergeant, what was his name again?
Sergeant Salmon.
Yeah, Sergeant Salmon. He's like, he kind of pointed over to the right-hand side there into the residential area. And he's like, keep your eye out, from that direction. That's where we were taking RPG fire after the IED went off. And so we were basically pulling security while we were trying to hook up that truck in order to drag it back to Iron Horse. But of course, by that time, the wheels were completely blown out, and Drake had busted the steering column away from the dashboard.
Yeah, he ripped that thing out, man, trying to get to Dennis or Nimlo, because Nimlo was TCing for me because I was home on R&R.
Oh,
and
okay.
For whatever reason, that night I couldn't sleep good, and I woke up and when I found out, like the next morning, Rudy let me know, and I was like, man, this is, that's why I couldn't sleep. But yeah, Drake, the vehicle, I think Nimlo is either pants were on fire or whatever. He was stuck in the truck, and so Drake broke that steering column out of the truck and pulled, because he pulled Drake. I mean, he was treating Dennis and got Dennis out, and then he ran back in there and ripped that column out and got Nimlo out, man.
Yeah, and he had shrapnel to the back of his neck too. I remember.
Yeah, oh, man, I'm telling you.
Yeah. And then so that kind of, I mean, there was a lot of stuff that happened up until then and after that and whatnot. But I want to get into your story. And I'll share with you from my side, and then just interrupt me along the way, Jay, and fill in the gaps. But I remember we were just coming off of our, usually we do, for the listeners out there, we did like a 3 hour patrol out on the route, and then we would come back in to do 3 hour QRF, quick reactionary force, and then in 3 hours back on the route, and then 3 hours QRF, and then we had a 12-hour downtime for, chow and shower and phones and or whatever we can manage to fit in. And we were just wrapping up one of our 3 hour out on the route missions, and the way I understand it, our platoon leader, Lieutenant Han, was a Texas A&M grad, an Aggie, and there was a major that worked inside the TOC that was also an Aggie, and he wanted, he had an Aggie flag, Texas A&M flag, and he wanted to go get a picture with like some local, like a local Iraqi family or something with the Aggie flag, so they can send pictures back to Texas A&M. And so I got called up by somebody at Cowboy Mike in the CP. I can't remember if it was whoever was on duty, if it was Captain Wazinski. I can't remember who it was, but we were told to basically swing by the front of the fob and pick up Rogue 1-4, the platoon leader, because he was just going to roll his one truck like to the gate, and we were going to pick him up. And then we were planning on going up to that family that was kind of North Pluto, right on Pluto intersects. Is it Eros? Oilers, yeah, that's right. Because there was that family there that we used to always kind of give food and clothing and stuff to. Pretty nice family. They lived in that mud hut underneath the overpass.
Yeah.
And so we're like, Roger. So I pulled my section up to the front gate, and we're just waiting for Lieutenant Han to roll his truck out with this major. And right at the last minute, and of course I'm lead truck because I was the senior squad leader, and you also traveled lead truck because you were a squad leader of your section. I don't know if you always did, but you did this time, or at least you had for a while up to this point. And right at the last second, I was told that to come back in, your section was just fixing to roll out, and you were going to take Lieutenant Han out on this photo op mission, and then bring him back, and then just continue on with your 3 hour patrol. And so I said, Roger, and I just headed back into the fob, and we just did our normal routine. My driver would take our 3 trucks through the fueling station after they dropped me off at the CP so I can go debrief, and you guys basically rolled out. As I was giving the debrief, I finished debriefing. I was heading back out to the motor pool to make sure everybody was, put the trucks back online. And that's when I heard it was basically, it was an IED explosion, but it was different in that it was almost like a double IED with a slight delay. So it was like a boom, boom. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't one solid boom. It was like a double IED that went off at the same time, but there was a little bit of a delay, and it was loud. And we knew it was up north. We knew that's the direction that you guys were headed. And so, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to kind of put 2 and 2 together. And we figured that you guys had encountered an IED. Now, what do you remember up to that point? Is there anything that you remember?
Yeah, so I remember we, like you said, we were gonna go out and we swung by to pick up Rogue 1-4 and his truck, and I think they were, in addition to taking the Texas A&M photo, they wanted to take some photos and get some other stuff with that family, because that family, every time we had done some sort of humanitarian aid mission, they had taken it and improved their quality of living. You remember? So like when we did the lamb, they improved it with the lamb, they improved it with a generator, they'd improved their compound, they improved. They had improved. They were the model of what's going right in Iraq up to that point. And so I think they were going to take some photos for some flyers. So we passed out those flyers on it, because we weren't quite into. We were starting to get into the hey, you need to go so you can be able to vote type deal, but we weren't quite there yet.
Right.
And so I think that was I think the A&M part was the big deal for the lieutenant and the major, but the core of the mission might have been the photos for the flyers.
Okay.
And but so I remember we rolled out. I want to say we actually stopped and were able to get that photo taken, and then we went and they called in and said that, hey, because normally we would just travel north and south on the military side of Pluto, up north of our fob, and they'd called in and I think they'd said that a convoy was coming and that we needed to resweep the southbound lane. And so we would sweep it, but we didn't sweep it when we went north. We didn't sweep it all the time. We would change our routes up and not to be routine. And so we had gone down there and cleared it, but they wanted us to get in front and clear it again. And so we gone up there and we were coming back. And I think on this particular day I was I was the second vehicle, and it was I think we were rolling. It was 4 or 5 trucks that day. I think I was the second vehicle in the deal, and we were going past we'd just come underneath the overpass there at I want to say it wasn't Oilers, but I think it was Arrows, and it like just got rocked, and you know how it is when you get hit with IED, you feel the explosion, but something was different. The truck was full of dust, and I just felt off. And so I started yelling at my guys. I was like, "Hey, I'm hurt. I need medical attention. Are you okay? We need to get the vehicle stopped. I'm hurt. I need medical attention. Um, are you okay? We need to get the vehicle stopped." And then, I don't remember if the vehicle came to us. I don't remember if we got crashed or if they stopped or what. But I was just kind of fixated on looking forward. And then from what the guys that were out there with me tell me is that they when they got to the truck, they kicked the door open, and Wiggles reached in and pulled me out and just slapped the fire out of me. And I like started breathing again and looked up at him, and uh, and then they pulled me out. And I remember I don't remember I don't remember him hitting me, but I do remember getting laid down on the concrete and then and looking up, and I remember uh, seeing Wiggles and them taking their belts off to use as tourniquets. And then there was the cargo pockets on my BDU pants, and there wasn't anything below it. And so I looked up at the medic, and I was like, "Hey," I said, "quit working on me. Go help my guys out." And they said, "Start farming." He says, "They're okay. They're already loaded up in the other truck." He says, "But you're hurt pretty bad." And I said, "Okay." I said, you keep working on me then." And so they kept working on me. They put me on. I remember wanting to try to get back into the fight. I can't, I want to say I think we were taking small arms fire, but I can't be for sure. But at the time, but I remember wanting to get back into the fight. I wanted my weapon. I wanted to get back into the fight. And I remember picking me up and putting me. And I kind of remember like using my arms to kind of lift up so they could get underneath my body armor. But they lifted me up and put me on the litter. And so Sergeant Hardy and the medic rode on top, and we're riding back in. And looking back, I understand why now. But I had and I don't dip anymore, but I used to dip, and I had a big old fat dip in. And I asked him, I said, "No, you guys can't give me water, but I need to get this dip out." And he's like, "My hands are busy," and I didn't understand what was going on, but he said, "Just flick it out with your tongue." So I just kind of pushed it out with my tongue, and then but I remember when we're on the way in, laying there on the road in Iraq. I remember I was just like, "Okay, God, this is way more than I can handle, but let's just get on with it." And I just kind of had this peace about it right then, right there. I just kind of had this peace about it. And so I remember riding on the Humvee, and then coming back. I knew we were coming back in. We rounded some of those crazy curves, coming back into the fob, and running over the track pads that they had set out as speed bumps.
Yeah.
And I remember being brought up into the aid station, and it seems like everybody was outside when we got to the aid station. But being brought up into the aid station, I looked up at the brigade surgeon. I said, "Sir," I said, "I want to see my guys go in first. I want to see them get treated." He said, he told me to shut up. And I remember being brought into the aid station, and they had that kind of that desk right there, and I think the guy that was manning the radios was right there. From what I recall, I think that's where the radios were at too, and I think they were already starting to call for a medevac and getting brought in, and them cutting my uniform off of me, and I wanted to look up and look at it and see how bad it was, and then I remember telling the brigade surgeon, no, never mind, I don't want to don't want to put myself into shock. And I remember the chaplain coming in, and we talked about the chaplain and I talked about it, and he was asking me questions, and he wanted to find out if I was Catholic, and I said, no, sir. I said, I'm not going to die over here, but we can pray. And I remember First Sergeant coming in. I remember, I think, Sergeant Malton, and y'all. I think I remember. I think you guys came into the deal as well. But I don't really, I can't really recall too much detail on that. I was kind of fixated on what was happening, like right around my face and everything. And I remember him talking about how much morphine he'd given me, or pain medication, and they were trying to get an IV. And I remember Doc saying, "No, I haven't given him anything." Um,
Mm.
and then I think you got a little bit different perspective on it from there.
Yeah, I was told to get my section spun up and ready to go. So unfortunately, it was one of those things where, like, my heart, I wanted to be there for you, with you, but I was given a mission, and I was torn, man. I wanted to just, I wanted to say screw that, screw that mission. I want to be, with Jay. But I knew I had a job to do, and I knew there was casualties. I didn't at the time. I didn't know how bad, but I could sense just from the way everybody was moving around and just the urgency that was kind of in the air and on the radios and everything that was happening. I knew it was serious. So I was getting my section spun up, ready to go. And when I finally got my section on the ready line, like I said, we had just put everything back online, in the motor pool from coming off mission. So I had to get all my guys rounded up, get our trucks on the ready line. I went to go find Sergeant Malt to kind of get a status on what was going on, what the mission was. And I remember running into Malt, and he was just completely just white sheet, like a ghost, man, just completely. I think he was in shock. And I asked him, who was it, what happened, and he said it was Fondren. And he says he's hit, he's been hit bad. And I just remember, like,
Yeah. No, I'm doing a phone interview. All right.
sorry, man.
Nah, that's cool.
And I just remember him saying, Fondren's been hit. And I said, how bad? And he goes, he got hit in the legs. And I was like, how bad? And Malt's like, he lost his legs. And I'm like, and I said, I just remember saying, so they won't be able to save his legs, and they have to do surgery. And Malt's like, no, man, like he has no legs, like they're not there, they're now no longer attached to his body. And I'm like, and I just remember Malt was just, he ran outside, he started to throw up, and was just completely just distraught and beside himself. And somebody that was there, I remember hearing you say, I think you were in shock at the time, but somebody that was there, I remember hearing the story afterwards. As you were getting brought in, you said something like, just let me get up and walk it off, I think is what the word you used. Because at that point, I still don't think you quite realized the severity of it. And I think everybody around you kind of did a good job of not lying to you, but kind of keeping you calm and just keeping your mind distracted from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I knew they were calling in an air medevac, and I remember Malt just telling me to get in the truck, get outside the gate, and I think more than anything, they just wanted to get a section back out on the route just to show a presence to the enemy, like, we're still here. You know what I mean? Like, you may have gotten us, but we're not going away, and we're still here. And I remember Malt gave me the instructions to go back out to the site, where the ID was, and see if there's anything that I could find. And one of the specific missions that Malt gave me, sending me out there, was, he says, see if you can find his legs, because we didn't want, you know the enemy to grab, your legs and use them as kind of a propaganda type of thing. And, Malt's like, God forbid one of the wild dogs, like, grabs it and runs off. And I was just, and he's saying this, and I'm just having a difficult time even processing just that thought process. You know what I mean? I'm like, I just couldn't believe, well, unbeknownst to me, and I think unbeknownst to Malt at the time, the guys that were treating you ended up kind of gathering up everything up off the ground, and packing it in when they evac'd you back in. So there wasn't a chance of that happening anyway. But I didn't know that, and I don't think Malt did either. But so we went out there to the site, and I could see where the IED, it was a double IED. It was a powder charge IED and a ball bearing IED. And I think the delay got screwed up. I think the intention was to hit the truck with the powder charge IED to disable the vehicle and to cause casualties. And then once everybody was dismounted, tending to the casualties, then I think that's when the ball bearing IED was intended to go off, to maximize casualties. At least that would make the most sense from a tactical perspective. But I think there was a problem with the delay, so it ended up going off almost, like I said at the beginning, almost simultaneously. There was a slight delay, but there was just a ton of ball bearings, divots, and actually embedded ball bearings in your truck and in a couple of the other trucks that were there at the time. Pretty horrific, man. It was a complex setup for sure. It wasn't the typical, drop an IED in a hole, run away kind of a thing. It was definitely set up with a lot of thought. Just the delay didn't go off the way I think it was planned to. Thank God it didn't. But and that was just another point in our deployment that just after that, man, you were evac'd out. I think you got evac'd to the green zone initially. I'm not sure if you were put into a chemically induced coma there and then flown to Germany or where all that happened. But I know that you ended up going to Germany for a while, and then ended up back in Walter Reed in the States. And I believe you were in chemically induced coma for over a month. But that was right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
And
day before.
it was, man, that was a rough holiday, man. I remember, the dining facility, how they do everything they can to try to keep spirits up, and they do little special things for, Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter and whatnot. But they had done up all the decorations and stuff for Thanksgiving, and they had all the fixings and the turkey and stuffing and all that. And I just remember going into the dining facility. It was supposed to be this, happy, celebratory, you know, type of atmosphere that you would normally have, even though you're deployed away from your family. You still celebrate, these holidays. And I just remember going in the dining facility, and everybody just kind of went in together. And I just remember getting a place. I got a plate and a cup and some silverware, and I remember setting a place at the table for you. And I went and grabbed my food, and I just sat down, next to an empty place setting, and just said a prayer for you, because at the time nobody knew if you were going to make it. Um, we were basically told by the brigade surgeon and the folks there that treated you, that tended you that day, that hope for the best, but don't expect a whole lot. They almost kind of expected you to not pull through, to suffer that kind of an injury
Yeah.
and to lose that much blood. But I will say that whoever reacted and did what they did on site, as quickly as they did, and just the way they treated the situation, kept you calm, and got you evac as quickly as they did, definitely saved your life, man.
No doubt, and that was the thing, it was the training, it was that we defaulted back to what we knew to do, and it was, if it's bleeding, put tourniquet on it. And I mean, they got it on there and got it secured and got it fast and got me out of there. And I remember, like, from my perspective, I don't remember seeing any blood. I don't remember hurting. I don't remember anything. I remember starting to feel kind of weak when they right there towards the end of my time at the aid station, and then when I got put on the medevac, and like my last um, memory in Iraq is getting on the medevac bird. And it's kind of like at the very end of MASH when they're flying away and it says goodbye. It's kind of like that. I
Mm-hmm.
could see the it was like I could see the FLA down there, the field ambulance and the people kind of still sitting around it, and then us going off. And I looked at the flight medic, and I'm like, I don't know how much longer I'm gonna be able to talk to you or keep my eyes open, but I'm gonna hang in here as long as I can. And he was like, don't worry about it. And he pushed something into my IV, and I was out.
That
And
was
then
it, huh?
that was it. And then they put me on that bird. I spent 48 hours in the green zone. I don't think I was expected to survive the first 24. 48 hours into it, they're like, "Well, we've done everything we can for him here. We got to put him on the plane and send him to launch stool." And I got to launch stool, and my arteries had blown out. And that's what Doc was doing. He said how busy he was, literally holding pressure points on both of my arms to keep me from bleeding out. He could not bring it to himself to put a third tourniquet on me,
Hmm.
and he just decided to hold it. And the
Oh,
brigade,
because right, yeah, because your arms were both your arms were hit too, pretty bad.
yeah, pretty really bad, and especially the right one. And the brigade surgeon was like, "I'm not gonna. If the medic made the decision, I'm not gonna make that decision either, and we'll just pressure dress it." And they did what they did, and clamped the arteries, and went in there. But when I got to launch stool, they had grafted it, but it had blown out, and the change of pressure or whatever, and so my thumb was gangrene, and they had to do the amputation. And then 48 hours after being at launch stool, it was that same kind of deal. I hadn't died yet. They had to send me on, and so they put me on. I mean, it was really kind of a rush to get me back stateside, so I could die. And then when I got to Walter Reed, I went through 9 months of recovery at Walter Reed, and I think over 60 surgeries. And that first couple of weeks, I was still in a coma, and then even after that, it was still groggy and all. And I remember, around Christmas time, starting to wake back up, and my son coming up there, and who's born while I was overseas, and my wife being there when I woke up, but having to learn how to do everything over again. But I was alive. I mean, that was my big deal. Was okay, Lord, either you're gonna give me the strength to face the day, or I'm gonna get up and walk out of this hospital room, and he gave me what I needed for the day, because this
Mm,
was way more than I couldn't move any of my arms. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't
mm,
push the call button. I couldn't push the pain pump. I couldn't do. I couldn't. I had to ask for everything. And then,
mm.
but that first night, all I could do was think about you guys. So
Well, likewise, man. You were the only thing we were thinking about, and that's what was tough, man. Is we didn't get word. We didn't get word about anything for the longest time. We didn't know, where you were, like how you were doing, like were you, did you die or are you still alive? Like we didn't know none of that for a long, long time, and just to continue to go out on mission, after that, and just to keep your mind focused on what you had to do, because your guys' lives depend on your full focus and your full attention. It was just tough, man. It's tough to, I guess they have a word for it. It's compartmentalize, right? You
yeah,
compartmentalize pain and thought and anger and frustration and not knowing, and you find little chambers within yourself to kind of lock things away so you can find a way to focus with what you need to do at the time. And I just remember, I can't remember how long it was. It seems like eternity, but it was at least, probably a month. We finally got word back that yes, you were still alive, and everybody's hopeful, that you're gonna pull through and make, recover enough to sustain life, because it was really touch and go there for the longest time. I don't think anybody really expected you to pull through, man. But you did, and to see now, right? So it's 12 years, later, and right now we're talking. And for the folks that are listening, you heard the kind of radio beep in on you. Your buddies there are trying to get you to come go downstairs or whatever and play a game. But so right now, 12 years later, you're in San Antonio, living in essentially an inpatient physical therapy office, Still plugging along, man. This is something that's going to be obviously with you forever, but you've done some amazing, I'll let you talk about kind of your time now, what you're doing now, but you've done some amazing things, man. I've seen your Facebook page and kind of follow along, and you go on these amazing fishing trips and hunting trips, and you just don't let the fact that of not having, appendages really stop you. You've got six beautiful kids, five boys and a girl. An amazing wife and family. So here's some harder questions, man. Like, how do you face the day? I can imagine not every single day is peaches, right? I'm sure there's struggles and challenges. What kind of gets you going? I'm sure you've had some downtimes, some ugly days, man. Like, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's just, I mean, my faith played a big part in my recovery and my family and everything. And like you said, not every day is peaches and roses, and not every day is great, but most days are. And you just, I mean, there's so many like little cliche things you could say, and they're all kind of true. It's like, well, what's the secret to success? And it's left foot, right foot. You just keep going, man. You just push off that back foot. You just keep doing it. The guys that didn't make it back, we owe them that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot, here we rib, like when I'm in therapy, we rib all the guys. Everybody kind of ribs each other to motivate each other to go along, and Yoda said it, there, do or do not, there is no try. So when it's time to walk on the prosthetics, you're gonna do it or you're not gonna do it. And I'm choosing to do it. It's just figuring it out. It's okay. I got to figure out how I'm gonna do this, but I'm going to do this. But it's, and for me, it's my faith. My faith is what motivates me. It's even though this life here is gonna be hard, I know that when I eventually die and go to heaven, it's going to be better. There's something better waiting for me. But it's, and so you just live each day for your family, for your country, for your God. So it's I get up and I got six beautiful kids. I breathe in. I'm above ground. I my wife loves me. I love her. She's there with me through everything I've been through. Every day I wake up, and then you just do it, because either you're gonna do it, you're gonna recover, and you're gonna do these things, or you're not. And you're gonna have a very lonely, bitter, miserable life that you don't have to have lonely, miserable life.
Mm-hmm.
Someone said, recovery is kind of like rent. It's due every day.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to put in the hard work and do it every day, and that's kind of the deal. It's an everyday thing. If you think about, well, I've got to deal with this for the next 40 years, 50 years. Man,
Mm-hmm.
that's a beast. But if I just have to get through today, I just have to get through this week. I just have to get some days. I just have to get through this moment.
Yeah.
You know?
So there's a lot. I'm sure you've seen it, you've heard it. There's a lot around PTSD and depression, and you hear the reports of 22 suicides a day from veterans.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've been there, you've done it, you've lived this. What do you think the attributing factors to that is? I mean, you've suffered through a hell of a lot more than what a lot of these guys have suffered through from a physical perspective, for sure, and in a lot of cases from a mental perspective, and I mean, you could even argue TBI and everything else. But so what sets you? What do you think? What's the difference there? What sets you apart from those others that seem to find that struggle unbearable and end up um, you know taking that other route out.
I think, man, I gotta default back to my faith, but I think it's this. I think that for me, my worth is not wrapped up in the fact that I was a staff sergeant. My worth is not wrapped up in the fact that I was a whole man. My worth is not wrapped up in that. My worth is wrapped up in that I'm precious to my God. And if my worth and value are wrapped up in that my God came and died on a cross for me, and so that I can be with Him after, in heaven, if my worth is in that, then um, it's not in what I can ever do or accomplish, and so I can get past all the limitations, and then it gives me the strength. Now we can expand on that. So let's say like for the infantry guy who's no longer the infantry guy, it's how do you get past that? All of us understand that being in the military is the coolest, suckiest thing we've ever done in our lives, and will never be that cool again. But it's how do you
Mm-hmm.
get past that? So it's okay, so it's what's my value in? Well, I was this awesome infantry soldier that led men in combat or did this, and now I'm not that. Now I'm a plumber. Now I'm an electrician. Now I'm none of the things that society says that I'm supposed to be. All the rules that we had in the military don't apply to society back here. And we don't understand that because we're all about taking care of the mission, taking care of each other, doing what's right. But it's getting past what our value was in what we were, but in who we are. So it's finding a new source of purpose and pride and worth.
Mm.
So if as the veteran and I can find what my worth is, and all of us have worth. So we can find what our worth is, and we can find a purpose. Because before it was the mission, but if we can find a new purpose to motivate us to live for, to work towards, to do, then I mean that's what we think. I think as a man we need a couple of things. I think we need a woman to love. I think we need a job or a purpose, a will, and I think we need to seek God's greater reward is what my worldview tells me. But I think that overcoming our PTSD, the demons that we sometimes snuggle and wrestle with, I think it's how do we relate to what we experienced in combat, what we experienced overseas. How do we translate that into who we are now? Because we're not those
Mm.
people anymore. Those have come and gotten out now. That's not who we are anymore. But it's how do I process that? How do I process the evil that I saw in the world? How do I process the evil that I might have done, or the anger or the hatred that I might have experienced? How do I process it and let it go? And
Mm.
I think that that's a real key. And for me, it's been my faith.
Mm.
And I think, but going, but reaching beyond that, it's you got to be able to figure out what your worth is, what your value is, where you get your purpose from, and then where you get your purpose from, and what you're working towards. And then when you have that, then the other option is not really an option.
Right. Yeah. It's where you find yourself after you've come to terms with that other piece of your life and letting it go.
Yeah,
And I think the key is letting it go. And I think everybody struggles with that. And you don't have to have been seriously wounded in combat to experience that. It's for some guys they can do time in the military and get out completely scratch free and still find themselves, on the other side of the military in a very deep, dark place. And it's
yeah,
because of that, I think. I think it's because you're right. Because they equated their value in themselves into what they were or what they had and the responsibilities that they had as a soldier, as a non-commissioned officer, as an officer, whatever the case may be. And I think everybody deals with that at some point. Once you get out of the military, everybody experience. I know I have.
yeah,
I go from acting platoon sergeant, senior squad leader, having the responsibility of 9 guys under my charge, and ultimately responsible for their lives. They're in my hands, and the training of and the mentorship of, etc. On and on and on, to now I am just an individual contributor at an entry level position at a company who's I've got a boss now that doesn't know a thing about how to lead people, and it's just as an example. And it's very easy to tie those knots of self-worth and equality to the things that you did and things that you were in the military, and to shed that, and to find yourself basically a naked man standing in civilian society is a very humbling experience, and everybody deals with it differently. So you suffered some significant wounds physically, but I think in all has made you a stronger man and and a stronger human being. And I know just from speaking with you before and now that you've played a large part in kind of helping other veterans and kind of see that even some veterans that might not be as far along in their recovery process as you've been, because there's been a lot of guys that have served many years after we got out of the service, and you're a product of what war, the ugliness of war and combat. And so here's a question not many people ask, and but I'm sure many people think, when you just mentioned, you got six beautiful kids, and they're some of them might be getting to the age where they understand, good guy, bad guy, good from evil, maybe even war and combat, and I'm sure they've seen a lot more than a lot of kids their age have seen. How do you explain to them kind of what happened to Dad in a way that, I mean, it's really kind of sharing your experiences is difficult in and of itself, but I'm sure your kids have asked. What do you say to them?
So yeah, I mean, so like when my boys, the older ones, I mean, they know. And what's cool now is that they know, and so when other kids ask, they can tell the story, and they can tell it, and they can tell it intellectually, and they can tell it, and even the little ones get it. But
Mm,
it's okay. So Daddy got blown up in the war by a bad guy,
mm,
and then when it's okay, well, what's a war? What? Well, somebody, came over here and tried to destroy our way of life, and they want to kill us just because we're different than them. Not because of
mm-hmm,
anything that we've done, not because but just because we're different than them. And so Dad went over there. The country decided that Dad needed to go over there with everybody else and fight and to defend not only our way of life but these other people. And it's kind of, for our generation of vets coming out of Iraq, the last several years, looking back on what's happened with ISIS and Dashish and all that and everything that's going on, it's very, I mean, before we could look and go, they voted, they elected their own government, things were going progressing well, and now things aren't well over there anymore. So
mm-hmm,
the sacrifice that we've made for that people group over there isn't there anymore. There's no tangible proof of it. But at the same time, the whole reason that we went to war, that threat, that conflict, that reason that people still want to come over here and kill us, that threat is still very much there.
mm-hmm,
And so to be able to intellectually argue that, I mean, I don't know if you remember. I remember going into going out and going into the big field over there by Cuervo and seeing WMD. So and then going into I don't know if you went into the free trade building that was there in the basement of it where that radioactive material was.
mm-hmm,
So all the stuff was there. See, I mean, it's been proven they had the VX gas IEDs and stuff and in the liquid form, and so the stuff was there, and so we knew it, and so it's the reason we fought was just. I think when you understand the reason that you fought was just, and then you can explain to the kids, and so my kids go, "Well, my daddy got blown up in a war," and they go, "Well, why? Because some bad people wanted to do bad things to you and I, and he went over there to help stop it."
mm. That's powerful, man. That's that's difficult, but I think the powerful message there is when you explain to the kids that, bad people came and tried to destroy our way of life because we're different. And it's so powerful because, that's where, racism stems from. And that's where, I mean, you see it, not to turn this podcast into like a political thing or anything. That's not where this is going, but you see a lot of, division within our country, and it all really comes down to because people are different. People look different. They live different. They have different beliefs. They got different political beliefs. But at the end of the day, that's really it. Everybody is different, and until this country and this world can come to terms with the fact that it's okay that we all believe something different. It's okay that we all might have a different shade of skin. It's okay that, whatever it is, right? Fill in the blank.
Yeah.
But we're all not the same. We're not ever going to be the same. We never were the same from the beginning of time. But that's an important lesson, I think, to teach our younger generation. Because you saw it over there. You saw kids that would react based off of the way their adults reacted, whether it was their adult parents or their uncle or whoever it was. But if you got a guy that was yelling at you and taking his sandal off and trying to beat you with it or whatever, the kid is following suit right behind him, mimicking those actions. And it's because they're learning that lesson from the people that are supposed to be teaching them that lesson. And I think it's so important to teach our youth of today that difference, that people that are different is okay, and to embrace people that are different. And I think they see that. They see that you have different struggles than other people. But you know what? You don't let it stop you. You still spend that quality time with them, and you still take them fishing, and you do things with them that able-bodied fathers sometimes won't do with their children. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even though there's some limitation there physically, you still do everything you can to be there for your kids, and it shows, man. And that's really awesome. I got a lot of pride and admiration for you and what you do and the strength that you have and display. And you're going to raise, you have raised and going to raise some. Well, you're raising some excellent kids that are going to become excellent adults someday, and that's awesome, bro.
Thanks, man.
Well, wrapping up here, man, I just really appreciate you taking so much time out of your schedule. I know you got a lot of stuff you got going on. So you've been down in San Antonio now for how long?
Since the end of January, so going on a little over 2 months. So I'm thinking maybe be down here for another month and a half, maybe 2, pretty solid. Fortunately, I live close enough to be able to go home on the weekends and stuff, but looking at getting discharged from here and then being over at the Center for the Intrepid pretty much full-time starting next week.
Nice. And I'm going to have some pictures of you, and I'm even going to try to grab that video of you that you posted the other day of you walking on your legs there, and put it in the show notes page for this episode. So thanks, Jay. I'm going to wrap it up here. For everything that you've done. You're a great inspiration. I look up to you, man. I love you a lot. And I mean that. You mean a lot to me. You can find all the show notes for this episode over at changeyourpov.com/episode 42. Never miss an episode. Hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. We have a lot more great content headed your way. If you want to reach out to me, you can contact me directly at eddie@changeyourpov.com. I would love to hear from you. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Change Your POV podcast with Eddie Lazary. Check out more content by going to changeyourpov.com. And remember, your ability and willingness to change your point of view will open doors of opportunity.